Let's get right into it, because what you're about to hear isn't fiction, and it isn't the plot of a thriller. These are real operations, real experiments, and real decisions made by governments and intelligence agencies, events so strange and disturbing that if they hadn't been documented, you'd probably never believe they happened at all. Number 10 begins with something almost impossible to imagine: the untraceable assassination weapon. Picture yourself in a crowded cafe sometime in the early 1970s. People are sipping coffee, talking, reading newspapers, living completely ordinary moments. You feel the slightest sting on your arm, nothing more than what a mosquito might leave behind. You brush at it instinctively, look around, but there's nothing there. No assailant, no weapon, nothing that stands out in any way. Hours later, without warning, you collapse, and doctors conclude you suffered a natural heart attack. But it wasn't natural at all. This wasn't just speculation or rumor. In 1975, during congressional hearings, the CIA was forced to reveal an actual weapon that did exactly this. The gun they displayed looked like something out of a spy novel, but it was very real. It fired a tiny dart so small that it was nearly invisible, made entirely of ice, and frozen inside this microscopic projectile was a concentrated shellfish toxin capable of inducing cardiac arrest almost instantly. The moment the dart pierced skin, the ice melted, leaving behind no metal, no powder, no trace of the projectile itself. The toxin spread silently through the bloodstream, triggering a massive heart attack while leaving behind nothing but a tiny red dot, smaller than an insect bite. During an autopsy, detecting this toxin was almost impossible. The cause of death appeared completely natural, and the weapon dissolved into nothing. This wasn't a conspiracy theory whispered in dark corners. It was demonstrated in front of Congress. The only thing the CIA refused to reveal was how often it had been used or whether such weapons still exist today. Number 9 takes us from invisible darts to city-sized experiments. In 1950, the U.S. Navy launched something called Operation Sea Spray, one of the most reckless and disturbing tests ever conducted on American soil. Without informing the public, the military sprayed a bacterial aerosol over the entire city of San Francisco. They wanted to test how vulnerable urban environments were to biological attacks. They loaded giant sprayers with Serratia marcescens, a bacteria they believed to be harmless at the time, and released it into the fog that rolled through the city. The mist carried it everywhere, across rooftops, through open windows, into homes, restaurants, hospitals. Nearly 800,000 residents unknowingly inhaled it. Soon after, doctors at Stanford University Hospital noticed an unusual spike in serious infections. The culprit? Serratia marcescens, the same bacteria used in the experiment. One man, Edward Nevin, died from complications related to the infection. His family sued the government, hoping someone would be held responsible. The court's response was chilling. National security interests outweighed one man's death, and it didn't stop with San Francisco. The government conducted similar biological dispersal tests in at least 239 cities across the United States. The public remained completely unaware until documents were declassified in 1976. For decades, ordinary Americans had unknowingly become test subjects in experiments meant to simulate biological warfare. Number 8 reveals an entirely different kind of manipulation, one that didn't involve weapons or covert operations but shaped the daily choices of millions. In 1967, sugar companies were facing a major problem. Research was emerging that linked sugar to heart disease, and the industry feared that their product would become the next public enemy. Much like cigarettes, their solution wasn't to improve public health, reduce sugar levels, or warn consumers. Instead, they decided to rewrite science itself. The Sugar Research Foundation quietly paid 3 Harvard scientists, the equivalent of $50,000 in today's money, to publish a paper that shifted the blame entirely to dietary fats. Their task was clear: exonerate sugar and make fat the villain. And they succeeded. The resulting paper was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most respected medical journals in the world. People immediately became terrified of fat. The low-fat craze of the 1,980 seconds and 1,990 seconds exploded. Products labeled fat-free were suddenly everywhere: cookies, cakes, snacks, foods that removed fat but replaced it with huge amounts of sugar. For decades, the public ate sweetened, highly processed foods believing they were healthy. Researchers didn't uncover proof of the sugar industry's involvement until 2016, when internal letters and documents were discovered. By then, the damage had already shaped nutritional beliefs for generations. Number 7 takes us back to the CIA, this time with a plan so bizarre it sounds like a parody. Project Acoustic Kitty. The agency poured millions of dollars into an attempt to turn domestic house cats into mobile surveillance devices. They implanted microphones in their ears, wired transmitters into their bodies, and wove antennas beneath their fur. These cybernetic cats were supposed to stroll casually past Soviet officials and record their conversations. But there was one major flaw in the plan. Cats are cats. During the project's very first field test, the CIA released their expensive spy cat near a park outside a Soviet building. Instead of heading toward the target, the cat wandered directly into traffic and was immediately hit by a taxi. The mission ended instantly. The official post-operation report read like a tragicomedy. Our final conclusion was that cats are not well suited for following instructions. The documents were declassified in 2001, cementing Acoustic Kitty as one of the most absurd intelligence failures ever recorded. Number 6 turns back towards something far less humorous. In the 1,950 seconds and 60 seconds, the CIA cultivated a network of journalists across major American media outlets, over 400 reporters, editors, and media personnel who covertly provided information to the agency or directly shaped the content of news stories. Some wrote propaganda pieces, others suppressed stories embarrassing to the government, some used their press credentials as covers for espionage. This sprawling operation, known as Project Mockingbird, meant that for years, Americans reading newspapers or watching evening broadcasts had no idea whether the news had been influenced or even written by intelligence agencies. When Congress uncovered the program in 1975, the CIA promised to stop, but only to stop using American journalists. Foreign journalists, of course, were still considered fair game. Number 5 reveals how domestic surveillance escalated far beyond spying. In 1971, activists broke into an FBI office in Media, Pennsylvania, and discovered documents detailing a secret program known as COINTELPRO. The FBI had been infiltrating, harassing, and undermining American citizens and organizations it considered politically threatening. Their tactics included spreading rumors, planting false evidence, sending anonymous letters accusing people of infidelity, and attempting to psychologically break targets. The most notorious example was a letter sent to Martin Luther King Jr., effectively encouraging him to end his own life. The program lasted 15 years until the activists' accidental discovery forced the truth into the open. Without that break-in, the public may never have learned how far the government was willing to go to silence voices it disliked. Number 4 examines the Gulf of Tonkin incident, one of the most consequential events in modern American history. The incident, specifically the second alleged attack on August 4, 1964, never actually happened. Yet it was used as the justification for full-scale U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Although the first encounter on August 2 was real, the second was a false alarm caused by radar glitches, misinterpreted sonar data, and nervous sailors firing into empty water. But despite immediate doubts from naval officers on the scene, President Johnson announced to the public that the U.S. had been attacked again. Congress quickly passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, handing the president broad military authority. Tens of thousands of soldiers died as a result of a fabricated event. Decades later, high-ranking officials, including Robert McNamara, admitted the truth. The second attack never occurred. Number 3 takes us into even darker territory. In 1962, the Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed a covert plan called Operation Northwoods, a blueprint for staging false flag terrorist attacks against the American people to justify a war with Cuba. The plan included blowing up U.S. ships, detonating bombs in major cities, and arranging the staged deaths of Cuban refugees. They even outlined a scheme to fake the shooting down of a civilian airliner. The plan reached the president's desk. John F. Kennedy rejected it outright. But the existence of these proposals wasn't made public until documents were declassified in 1997, more than 3 decades later. Number 2 recounts a chapter of medical ethics so horrific it's difficult to comprehend. In 1946, American doctors conducted secret experiments in Guatemala, intentionally infecting thousands of vulnerable people, including prisoners, children, soldiers, and psychiatric patients with syphilis and other STDs. Many victims were exposed without their knowledge, and some were injected directly with the pathogens. Others had the diseases introduced into open wounds or even spinal fluid. Over 5,000 individuals were used in these experiments, which remained hidden for more than 60 years. The truth surfaced in 2010, long after many victims had died without knowing why they were ill. Finally, number 1. Project MK Ultra. Arguably the most infamous government program of all. This sprawling CIA effort experimented with mind control using drugs, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychological abuse, and electroshock therapy. Conducted across universities, hospitals, and mental institutions, many participants never knew they were test subjects. The CIA even dosed its own employees with LSD. One scientist, Frank Olson, was drugged without his knowledge and died days later when he plunged from a hotel window. His death was ruled a suicide at the time, but later evidence suggested he may have been unconscious or dead before he fell. When the program's existence began to leak, the CIA director ordered all documents destroyed, but a clerical error spared thousands of financial records that survived in a mislabeled box. These rediscovered files, revealed in 1977, exposed the scale of MK Ultra programs designed to manipulate memory, break minds, and reshape human behavior. That's all for today. If you want more videos like this, stories that peel back the curtain on hidden history, stick around. There's much more to uncover.